All right, we're back in Alabama today, heading to a Spanish Fort to Pottery Barn for the Bridal Open House. Now, normally it's called Wedding Wednesday because it's normally held on Wednesday, but this month they decided to do something a little different. They're going to do it on Sunday because we figured we could probably attract more brides by having it on Sunday. And that was something we talked about. Usually on Wednesdays, people usually have church gatherings and a lot of things. And Wednesday's usually a slow night, so they decided to go ahead and try it on Sunday afternoon this time. So I think that's great. Anyway, it's about 10:40 right now. We're probably about another, I don't know, maybe 10-15 minutes away from the facility. We're going to Pottery Barn. We've been there before. We were there just a couple last month, and then also back in July for the Bridal Open House. So anyway, not a whole lot to talk about with that. We're going to have our fender passport out this evening, and I'm going to have or this afternoon rather, and I'm going to have a video playing, and just be there playing some music. So anyway, we'll talk to you once we get there, once we get set up. All right, we're here and set up. We're back at Pottery Barn here in Spanish Fort, and here's my setup today. And get this, I'm the only vendor that's here. I think we had about 4 other vendors supposed to be here, but none of them showed up. But anyway, here's my setup. Got the video playing with the up lighting and everything. Got my special there, some giveaways. And it's just a little after 12 now. We're supposed to go till 3 o'clock this afternoon, so we'll see how things go. Okay, it's now Tuesday morning. It's about 10 minutes till 12 noon, and you just saw the a little bit of footage from the Bridal Open House that we had at Pottery Barn in Spanish Fort, Alabama on Sunday. And I didn't really do a whole lot of filming for that, and I'll explain to you why that was. It was because I was the only vendor that showed up. I don't know what happened, and I was talking to some of the co-workers there at Pottery Barn, and they really don't know what happened either. I mean, I think we had about 4 vendors that were supposed to show up. 1 ended up canceling, and then 2 just didn't show up. I don't know if they got the dates mixed up or what the situation maybe, but anyway, I was the only vendor that was there, and so I just ended up just staying there, just play music there for a while. And I had a bride that came by, and I talked to her for a little bit, but anyway, not really much to film, so that's why I didn't film a whole lot there. So anyway, what I wanted to do though is I wanted to just spend the last few minutes of this video talking about something that's very important to us here in the United States. And that is the presidential election. Now, the general election is 2 weeks from today. Today is October 25th, and we're going to be going to the polls and voting on November 8th, unless you live in a state that's doing early voting like I do here in Florida. I went ahead and voted this morning, so I'm happy about that. I've gotten mine done and over with, and I'm so glad that I finally got that done. Now, what I am going to say, though, is I'm not going to be talking about a particular candidate or who you should vote for or tell you who I voted for or why you should vote for somebody or vote one way or the other or anything like that. I'm just going to talk to you in general, and if you happen to be watching this video sometime in the future, you probably know who won the 2016 presidential election by now, but this applies to any election that we have coming up, whether it's the midterm elections or the next presidential election or whatever the situation may be, it still applies. So what I want to do is I want to encourage you to get out and vote if you live here in the United States, or if you live in another country. I mean, if you can vote on your elections there, then I encourage you to do that as well. It's something that we get to do that not a lot of people get to do. We have a lot of freedoms here in the United States. A lot of people would love to have in other countries, and we get to choose our leaders, and that's one of the best things about living in this country. It's one of the things that I love about living in the country. But you know what? I've been reading Facebook like a lot of folks do, and I've been seeing a lot of people posting about how their vote doesn't count. They're like, well, I live in California. I'm a Republican. What good's it going to do me to go out and vote? Because if it's already blue, it's going to go for Hillary, or I live in a red state. It's already going to go for Trump or something like that. Well, you know what? If everybody thought that way, nobody would ever go to the polls, when you think about that. So, really when you think about this for a second, it's really not these presidential polls that you see, where they're making all these projections right now saying, okay, Hillary's going to win this state and Trump's going to win this state and all vice versa and all that other stuff. I've seen some polls where they say Trump's ahead. I've seen some polls that say Hillary's ahead. I don't put too much stock in these presidential polls, and I'll tell you why. Because really what matters is who gets out and votes. That's what's going to determine this election, not these polls where they just call somebody up or something like that. I mean, that really doesn't matter. And I think a lot of times, I'm not really going to say I totally agree with Trump saying that the system's rigged or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But I will say, though, that the media sometimes they will try to sway you on making you think your vote doesn't count or something like that by telling you the election's over and all this other stuff. The election's not over until it's over. So whether you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, or whatever you may be, independent, whoever you're wanting to vote for, I encourage you to get to the polls and vote. That is so important that you do that and make sure that your voice is heard. And I was listening to Herman Cain the other day. Now, if you remember Herman Cain, he ran for the presidency on the Republican side in 2012. He was also the CEO of Godfather's Pizza. And a really brilliant man. I love listening to what he has to say, and I listen to his radio show in the morning on my way home from work. And if you happen to get him in your area, I would encourage you to listen to him too, because he does have a lot of good insight on a lot of things, and he just tells it like it is. And one thing that he was talking about was he was talking about the Electoral College. And in the United States, we don't elect a president by popular vote. We actually elect it by Electoral College. Like in Florida, for example, we have 29 electoral votes. I think California has like 54, and each state has their own set of electoral votes. And a lot of people will say, well, you know what, I'm not going to go vote because my vote doesn't count. Well, Herman Cain brought up a really good point. He said that in order for a presidential candidate to receive the electoral votes in a particular state, they have to get 50% of the vote plus one. Now think about that for a second, okay? 50% plus one. Now your vote could be that plus one. And we don't really think about things like that, So think about that for a second. If everybody sat there and said, okay, I don't think my vote's going to count, because I live in a blue state, and I like Trump, so why even go vote because Hillary's already going to win, or I like Hillary, and I live in a red state and Trump's going to win, or vice versa, whatever the situation may be. If everybody thought that way, nobody would ever get to the polls and vote. So I think that we need to make sure that we make our voices heard and get out there and vote. Okay, whoever you vote for, it's a fundamental right that you have in this country. So exercise that fundamental right. Make sure your voice is heard, and then that way you can look back and say, you know what, I was able to go to the vote, and I can be or go out and vote to the polls, and I'm proud of my decision. You can live with that. Because I think Herman Cain, I'm not sure exactly how he put this, but he said that the third cardinal sin is not voting at all. That's the worst thing you can do, because if you don't go vote, then you're not making your voice heard. And not only that, maybe you might not like the two choices that we have for president this year. And I admit, we could have probably had better choices on both sides, but you know what, that is what it is. And so we need to make a choice, and let's go and vote, and make our voices heard. But still, there are a lot of other elections that you need to think about as well. There are a lot of other candidates. I know, like here in my county, we're electing a new sheriff. Well, actually, I think our sheriff is going to get reelected, but anyway, I mean, we do have sheriff's races. We have other races going on with Senator Marco Rubio, who ran for the presidency earlier. He's running for re-election here in Florida, and we have just a lot of other races, local races, and you got local and state races in your area as well. So I'd encourage you to go and vote for that. There's amendments that you can vote for. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do to make your voices heard. So make sure that you get to the poll and vote. I mean, go to your local polling place, and if you have early voting in your state, get out there and vote. That's the most important thing I can tell you. So anyway, that's where we're going to leave this, and we got more gig logs to come. I actually got a couple weeks off, so probably won't be having any weddings coming up anytime soon, but we'll be having some coming up a little bit later on, and we'll be talking more about that later. So until next time, practice and enjoy, and remember, get out and vote.